guys, I am addicted to commentary videos. Hey, what's up guys, Cyber here from the Cyber YouTube channel, and I'm back with another video where I answer your questions. Obviously no one asked me this because I don't have very many people in the comments asking me to do videos on these kinds of things. But today we're going to be answering the question, what would it be like if life never left the 80s? Okay, I swear I'm gonna see a very big impact. I swear this is gonna be kind of hard for me to answer, but I feel like I've got some kinds of answers up my sleeves. So the first thing that would definitely change is we would not have the advanced video games like we do today, like the Xbox One, 360, all that kind of stuff. We would be stuck with, more than likely, normal arcades. We would have perms, something I would not be very happy about, definitely. Well, people would still be watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it would be coming on. We wouldn't have Netflix, we wouldn't have Hulu, and people would be so mad, especially, well, they wouldn't be mad considering the fact that they would never have left the 80s lifestyle to begin with, which means that they wouldn't know a life with Hulu or Netflix or that kind of stuff. But I know a lot of people who can tell you about the 80s. I know a lot of people like that. The 80s or 90s were very complicated. They were a lot more complicated than I remember them anyway. I'm such an idiot. How do I remember the 80s? But the point of this whole thing is, life in the 80s would be very different than today because of the fact that they did not have the technological advancements that we do now. Like, for example, they don't have the clothing brands, they don't have the television, they don't have YouTube, that kind of stuff. If we were still living in the 80s, I probably wouldn't even be on this platform to begin with, which I've not been on this platform for like a couple years anyway, so the problem with living in the 80s would be that, honestly, that question depends on whether or not people know that they used to live in the 2010s or not. If they know it, then they probably would have a very hard life because they would realize, everything's gone, we've got Minecraft, Fortnite, all that crap is gone now. GTA's gone, that wasn't made till the later 90s, I'm pretty sure. They wouldn't have all the popular games like we do now that kind of just shaped the gaming industry like we know it. But what really bothers me about this is the fact that people would really just be over here complaining about this whole thing when they don't see the good parts about the 80s, which is what we're going to talk about now. In the 80s, they had good stuff like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. There wasn't much swearing on television. People actually took their jobs and stuff seriously. Well, not really, but it was a cross between funness and boringness, and that's just, wow. Okay, I feel like they took their jobs at least a little bit seriously. We take ours too seriously. We couldn't have fun, but people don't realize that anymore. People back then didn't really take their job seriously. If they had a problem with somebody, they wouldn't hesitate to say it to their face. There wasn't wimps. They didn't have problematic global events like, I'm not going to go into detail about a lot of them, but there were a lot of problematic events that has happened in the 2000/2010s, and I feel like if you want to get technical here, that was a lot better than the 80s had a lot less of those. considering the fact that not all of the people of the 80s really cared much about other people. They didn't care about what other people thought. Mainly that was just the school kids, and even they didn't really give much of a crap about them. And to be honest, that was a really good thing that people now could just learn about, because now people always think, okay, you know what, I'm being bullied, I'm going to go into a huge clinical depression. Nothing towards them anyway. A lot of them do have it. I'm just saying it can be teen drama sometimes, but not all of the time. It can continue to be clinical actual depression, but people cannot just be depressed all their life. They have to just carry on and realize, okay, you know what, I'm doing the wrong thing here. I need to realize that life's not all about the past. It's about what I'm going to do in the future. And that's just something that people need to learn about, honestly. But honestly, people do not want to learn that. People used to know that kind of stuff in the 80s. That's why I am so addicted to that time period, because of the fact that people now could learn a lot from people who lived back then. I know that I know a lot of people from there, and I've asked them, and they said that compared to now, the people was a lot nicer and a lot better than they were now. And the problem with that is that it's getting worse, people. We need to stand up and we need to realize, okay, what we're doing is wrong. We need to try to do it better. But anyway, as I was saying about the 80s, people were a lot less complicated. It was a lot simpler back then. It would be a lot simpler now if we still lived in the 80s, in the 80s lifestyle. People were kind of nice, I'm not gonna lie. There were some bullies, some forms of bullying, but mainly people just kept to themselves like good children always should. And they knew if they were taking something too far. The only thing that really would bug me about living in the 80s is definitely going to be the stinking hairstyles. Probably the wackiest thing I've ever heard is that big, like, 10-story hairstyle that they had in the 90s. Definitely was not looking forward to that. I bet a lot of people who lived then weren't. That was, like, the coolest thing back then, and I don't understand why they wanted to make themselves look like Marge Simpson or something. Because their hairstyles were literally, like, were like, the biggest things on the planet. Because they would make their hairstyle stand up so much. But I'm in all seriousness, people, you can learn a lot from the 80s. The 80s was a good period, and if to be honest, they had a lot of good music that didn't always contain profanity like they did now. Now all we have is just plain music that is just all we have now is music that's just rapping. All it is people are always swearing their songs. I think that if we lived now, the world wouldn't be in such a mess, because people would learn from their mistakes like they used to. But people don't do that now, and that's something that really bugs me, and probably I see why it bugs all the other adults that used to live in that time period. Because young people always act like, okay, you know what, I don't know how to deal with this, but I'm gonna do this myself and make the problem even worse instead of just walking away, you know? And the 80s was a time period that was really good for people to actually report bullying, and I feel like that nobody used to do it at that point, because in the 80s, people would just report the bullies to the teachers, to their parents, or something like that, and it would solve the whole issue. But now people don't want to do that because we're just little babies and we don't see that. But in all seriousness, guys, I feel like we could learn a lot. I'm Cyber from the Cyber YouTube channel, and goodbye.